All right, I've got John Kurtz from here on YouTube, the John Kurtz Show. You guys should go check it out if you haven't already. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Kansas State coming off of a bye last week, Colorado coming off of a bye last week, and a game that's probably a little bit more hyped than we thought it would be coming into the season. I do think there's some truth to the idea, John, that Colorado is everyone's Super Bowl and everyone wants to beat them because of what they see on social media. But even past that, this game seems like it has a little bit more meaning than I think we maybe thought 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think, for K-State, there's an interesting tie there with Dylan Edwards, who transferred last year from Colorado, who's a local kid. He's from Derby, Kansas. His dad played at K-State, and that recruitment was pretty wild. He was committed to K-State, then Notre Dame, then Colorado. Now, eventually, he transfers back to K-State, and he's been good this year. Had a huge punt return for a touchdown against Arizona, for instance, and has been a little spark plug carrying the ball. So I thought a lot of the storyline going into this game at the beginning of the year would just revolve around, all right, Dylan Edwards homecoming. They're going to want to get a win for him. Colorado's going to be okay, but, I don't think K-State fans were sweating it a ton. But now you're sitting here like, okay, well, yes, they're going to be fired up to play Colorado in general. But now you've got a lot of hype, a lot of attention on Colorado. 4 million people just watched them smack UCF, which I understand is not aged particularly well, and maybe UCF isn't that good either. But either way, Colorado is better than I anticipated they would be at this point. I mean, they looked like an actual complete team in the way that they dismantled UCF. Their defense seems to be playing better. They're actually able to at least run the ball a little bit, which is really all you need when you have Shedeur and Travis Hunter in that receiving core, which has just been so good. And if there has been a big weakness for K-State this year, they've given up a lot of big plays in the passing game. And so now you're really concerned about the K-State secondary and how they're going to actually hold up against that Colorado receiving core. Throw on top of that, Colorado's got a lot of momentum. Throw on top of that, you're going to play on the road in one of these late night windows again, Big 12 after dark, which did not serve K-State well at all at BYU. My concern level has raised a ton for this game, and I think it's going to be a dogfight.
It almost feels, and the Big 12 is crazy, and so crazy things could continue to happen, but it almost feels pretty close to an elimination game for Kansas State. Like it feels tough to, now enough crazy stuff could maybe happen, right? Like 2 losses isn't the end of the road, but it feels like one that Kansas State almost, would you call it a must win?
Maybe not quite, just because I feel like the Big 12 has become such a jumbled mess now. I say that realizing like Iowa State and BYU fans might give me side eye for that, especially Iowa State, because if you go look at their schedule, it's really manageable until they end with Utah and K-State, and they have one of those on the road, one of those at home. BYU, I do feel like, is going to take a loss or two at some point. I think they are much better than I anticipated that they would be. But Utah, I felt like 2 weeks ago, after winning in Stillwater, was going to be runaway winner for the Big 12. Now it's like you just saw today, Kyle Whittingham had said that there is a point where they would just pull the plug on Cam Rising this year and ride with Isaac Wilson at quarterback, and he won't tell anybody when they're there, but there's a possibility that could happen. And so all of a sudden you're just like, all right, well, that win at Oklahoma State doesn't look very good anymore, and now they may be stuck with Isaac Wilson at quarterback, a true freshman. Are we really expecting them to run and hide from everybody? I'd imagine that they're going to pick up another loss somewhere along the way, and they already have a Big 12 loss. Everybody feels so flawed, and it seems like this is turning into a conference where everyone's going to cannibalize each other. That I don't know that I would go as far as to say that. However, the problem is if you do lose this game, there is another tough road trip waiting for you going to West Virginia next week, and you're all of a sudden going from playing in the Mountain Time Zone to playing in the Eastern Time Zone. And John Wilner just had the stat this past week of Big Ten teams that have traveled across 2 time zones for road games this year. They're 1-8. Ask USC, for instance, how that went, and Michigan, how that went this past weekend. So I have some concern about making the back-to-back road trips there, and West Virginia suddenly looks like they've got a lot more life after just blowing out Oklahoma State and Stillwater this past week. So the schedule is not going to get any easier. They've got a road trip to Ames at the end of the year. I think the way the league has shaped up, K-State's schedule looks tougher than it did at the beginning of the season. So the must-win aspect to me comes into more just what you have left. You're running out of room, just running out of runway, basically, if you're still going to get this plane off the ground and headed to Arlington to the Big 12 championship game if you do lose this one.
Yeah, the other side of that, and something I thought of when we were talking about it, is then you'd have to figure out a way to jump Colorado too, which I think that Kansas
Yeah.
State might be the toughest game left on their schedule. Or I guess there's one team you don't have to jump, right? You finish second, but they have games against maybe a rising list Utah, a Kansas that hasn't been very good, a Cincinnati team that they should in theory beat at home, and they've got tough ones too. They need to beat Arizona. They would need to win a game at Texas Tech. They have Oklahoma State in there as well, who again feels like a weird team, but not a very good team. And so, yeah, Colorado, for them, it does feel like it could propel Colorado on to, they're kind of in that second tier of at least in Vegas, like the odds, like the top tier is still Kansas State, Iowa State, and Utah's still up there too, but we'll see, if they have any staying power. And then that next tier includes Colorado, like the around 800 to plus 1,000. I think if they win this, they kind of jump into that top tier as buy or sell that. If Colorado wins this, they're an actual competitor for the Big 12 championship.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I think listening to you rattle off the schedule too, I'm like, man, like if they win this game, absolutely they're in that conversation. They're already basically in that conversation as far as I'm concerned, which is wild. And this is sort of the beauty of the Big 12. I mean, they were a Hail Mary away from losing to Baylor and nobody talking about any of this really. That's how close it can be in this league where the teams are all bunched up so tightly together. But I think the more Colorado gains confidence, I just kind of feel like, it's sort of you should have killed them when you had the chance sort of situation for Baylor and the rest of the Big 12. Like you should have just put the nail in Colorado's coffin, at least to some extent, from the Big 12 championship race at that point. You let them get confidence. You let that hype machine build. I mean, it gets tougher and tougher to stop them. So I think undoubtedly, yeah, you have to respect them. And again, a lot of it is substance-based too, because it's not just that they're finding ways to win games. Like they're improving in the two areas that were the clear weaknesses of the team going into the year and even at the beginning of the season, which was not being able to run the ball at all and not being able to stop anybody. And really since the second half of that Nebraska game when the defense kind of tightened things up, that defense has been pretty good, and they at least had a solid rushing performance against UCF. So if they can continue any of that, I mean, they're definitely dangerous enough to do it.
So when you think about Avery in this game against a defense that is improved, how much does he need to go out and kind of, not necessarily do it all himself, but like kind of go win the game? Like, do you expect them to run him a lot? Something that Colorado's actually done a decent job of slowing down opposing rushing attacks and running quarterbacks even. What are your thoughts on just how they manage Avery in this game and what they kind of expect out of him?
I think the biggest thing to me that I'll be thinking about for this game is just poise, because he admitted basically that he was not very poised at BYU when they played in this same spot, same time slot, 9:15 Central, very late night. They were facing a juiced up crowd, one that he did say was weirdly friendly after that game. It was loud, but friendly. It's going to be loud and the complete opposite of that in Boulder, man. I've been to a couple games in Boulder. They are anything but friendly there. So it's going to be a tough environment to play in. And I think that is what he still has to prove. When he's been at home this year, I mean, he's had some really nice performances. The Arizona and Oklahoma State games were tremendous performances. He was Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week 2 weeks ago against Oklahoma State. The passing game seems to be coming along. He's still running pretty effectively. And I would expect that he'll be able to find some yards on the ground against Colorado. But if you're going to try and throw against Travis Hunter, man, I mean, you can't make many mistakes. And we've just seen a lot of sloppiness throwing the ball from Avery Johnson, especially kind of in the medium range stuff. It seems like the deep ball and the shorter stuff he's much better at, but kind of the intermediate routes, that's where things get really tricky. And that's where I worry about, what could happen there trying to go up against a Travis Hunter. So a combination of just the passing game and generally not losing your poise if you do have a turnover, which is, if you remember the BYU game, that's what happened. DJ Giddens fumbled for the first time in his career. It got run back for a touchdown and then was immediately compounded by an interception on a screen pass from Avery Johnson a couple plays later. And then he's trying to get it all back in one play at the beginning of the second half and throws a horrific interception after that. So you can't have that happen. He's going to have to grow, I think, just from a composure standpoint in this game and prove that he can do that.
So another question mark that we had for Colorado coming into the end of the year was their offensive line and how that could hold up. Now Shador's still taking, in my opinion, too many sacks. But certainly it's gotten better, and they've protected him better this year than they did last year, and it's what's kept him healthy, and it's what's honestly kept them winning. How do you like the matchup of Kansas State's defensive line versus Colorado's front?
Yeah, I think it's doable. I think K-State's defensive line has been solid. Keep an eye on Uso Seumalo, who's one of K-State's defensive tackles. Not exactly a starter anymore, but pretty close to playing starter snaps, and he got hurt late in the Oklahoma State game. But Chris Kleiman just said earlier today at his weekly press conference that he's at least ahead of schedule getting back. That will really help them. But Brendan Mott has been a pleasant surprise at defensive end. Felt that he'd be solid this year, but he's been much better than that and been a guy to really kind of lead that unit. So it's not been overwhelming or dominant, but I think it has been solid. And when K-State's really needed to at times, Joe Klanderman, the defensive coordinator, has done a pretty good job of just dialing up different pressures, bringing pretty creative blitzes. I would imagine you're probably going to see some of that. I would guess that they're going to sense that there's enough of a weakness there that they would want to really exploit that, not give Shador time to just stand back there all day. But I would feel decent about K-State's chances of the front four or front three. Really, they're going to play a three-man front most of the time, generating still some pressure against that Colorado offensive line, even though it is improving. I don't expect anything crazy like they're going to wreck shop because that Colorado O-line has gotten better. But I think K-State will win its fair share against that O-line.
So I'm going to ask a question, but I'm going to take away an answer that you're not allowed to give. But I want to know, outside of Travis Hunter, who I think should, if he keeps up what he's doing, I think he should win the Heisman this year. I know that Miami's got a good quarterback, and I know that Boise State has a good running back, but that's my take, is that Travis is still probably the best player, and what he's doing is so unheard of. But outside of him, and I'm more than happy for you to talk about him a little bit too, but what worries you the most about Colorado? Besides, you're not allowed to say Travis Hunter though, because that's just too easy an answer.
Yeah, no, I mean that's totally fair. Honestly, it's the depth of the receiving core, because I think at the beginning of the year, everybody thought like, okay, Travis Hunter obviously is a great player and Shador can run around and make plays. But I think as you've seen the season develop, I mean, like Will Shepard had a great game against UCF, made an incredible diving catch in the end zone there. Like Jimmy Horn, LeJonte Wester. They've got some real depth in the receiving core. So even if K-State is able to lock down Travis Hunter, which I don't think you really can, but as much as you possibly can, with Jacob Parrish, who has been a really good corner, I think is an all Big 12 corner that K-State has. They've been the other spot's been a little bit weak, and you're going to have, a Keenan Garber on a Jimmy Horn or a Shepard or Wester. Those are the matchups that get concerning to me, even if you can find a way to really neutralize, that's probably a better word, neutralize Travis Hunter. How are the other receivers going to be able to hurt you in the secondary? And Tulane was able to expose K-State numerous times in a game that K-State was pretty lucky to win. And then, BYU did some of it, not a ton. It was basically just K-State coughing up the football there. But even in a couple of K-State's wins, they've definitely had some bad moments with the secondary. So that's really my concern. I've been very impressed with the depth of what Colorado brings at the receiver position.
Yeah, they feel like especially with the guy at the top that we mentioned, they feel like a top 5 or better. That might be underselling them wide receiver unit in the country. Like really, really impressive with how good they've been this year. It's early in the week, so I'll give you a little wiggle room on this if you don't want to make like a full out prediction. But do you have a lean in this and how you think it goes? Who ends up coming out on top here?
Yeah, man, it's really tough. Like I'm worried. As somebody who obviously I've got a rooting interest in the game. I would like to see K-State win the game. I'm pretty nervous about this. I feel like situationally, it's setting up pretty well for Colorado there. Man, I know K-State's been about a 4.5 point Vegas favorite, depending on where you're looking at. I think maybe it's just the homer brain in me and giving them the benefit of the doubt, but I would take K-State like 30-27, I'm thinking like a field goal, close kind of game here. A lot of points potentially scored between the two offenses. That's the first time I've thought about it though this week. So I'm glad you're not totally holding me to that.
Yeah, we'll give you a little grace with how early we're recording this. this week. So where can people follow you? Where can they find more of your work? I'm sure you'll do a more official prediction later in the week, and people can check that out. Where at?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're a Big 12 fan, make sure to check out my Big 12 newsletter, Open for Business. You can subscribe at ofbnews.com and get Big 12 news straight to your inbox multiple times per week for free. 2,500 plus Big 12 fans reading that right now. I'm also on YouTube, just my name, John Kurtz. And you can check out the live shows there Wednesdays and Sundays. We get a ton of people on there. It is really awesome. You can also see those live on Twitter if you follow me at JL Kurtz on Twitter, and we get a ton of people in from the Twitter audience. And then if you are a K-State fan and you're interested in the K-State podcast that I do with Cole Manbeck and Derek Young, that is just 3MA, like EMA with a 3, wherever you find your podcasts.
Awesome, man. Well, we appreciate it a ton. Good luck this weekend. Again, it's another late night for me. I stayed up watching that Cal-Miami thing the other day and had to take about 2 naps on Sunday, but I'm excited for it even with how late it'll be. I'm excited to watch this one for sure.
I'd appreciate it, TJ.
Thanks, buddy.